In a nuclear power reactor, the way to produce electricity is to take uranium-235 atoms and split them, no differently than they are split in an atomic bomb explosion. This produces over 100 radioactive chemicals, not found in nature, but only when this fission process occurs. They are tiny metal particles or gases. They are considered waste products. There's no practical use for them. And they have to be stored whenever possible, which is another issue with nuclear power. But some of it must be released into the air and into the water. Once they're in the environment, enter bodies either by breathing or by food or by water. And since each is radioactive, each is a risk for cancer, birth defects, and other health problems. The way that regulators got around this is when nuclear reactors began operating in the 1950s, regulators set what they called permissible limits of emissions and permissible limits of radioactivity in local air and water and food. And every owner of a nuclear plant must every year do a review of these levels and report them publicly. If they're below the permissible limits, they're considered safe. There is no regulation to monitor cancer in the local area or health trends in areas near nuclear plants. Our group, which formed in the late 1980s, has tried to fill this void by doing studies of health near nuclear plants. Let's start with Oswego County. It consists of small towns, rural areas, and farms. Demographically, there's really no obvious health risk factor. This is a time trend looking at the percentage that the Oswego County cancer death rate is either above or below the New York rate. Okay, and it goes by 5-year periods. Now, if you look at the bar on the left-hand side, you'll see it is pointing downward. This is the period from 1968 to 1973, just before and just after the reactors began operating, which we wouldn't expect any effect on cancer. But as you see, as time goes on, we move to the right. Within 10 years, the county cancer death rate began to exceed the U.S., and the gap has grown since. And the largest gap is the most recent period, 2019 to 2023, where the county death rate is 32% above the state, as opposed to 10% below before it started. Now, if you want to put this into human terms, about 3,000 fewer would have died from cancer. That is our excess, 3,000 out of 12,000. Here's another graph, the same thing. It's the Oswego County versus New York State's death rate, not for cancers, but for all causes total, because radiation can harm many different organs in the body. And you'll see that there has been an increase, maybe not quite as sharp as for cancers. The total excess is 4,200. So 4,200 excess deaths in the last half century, 3,000 of which are cancer. Our group has done studies looking at just the opposite. What happens to local health when a nuclear plant closes? Indian Point is located in northwest Westchester County. The two reactors closed early in 2020 and 21. Take a look what happened to infant health in these 4 counties compared to the rest of New York State. These look at 4 different measures of infant health. The blue bars represent what happened, what was the change in rate near Indian Point, and the brown bars represent what the change in the rest of New York State. Look at the 2 on the left. That's infant mortality, deaths under 1 year old. Near Indian Point, the rate dropped about 11% as opposed to the rest of the state, about 7%. Okay, we move to the next set of bars. This is birth defects. The CDC website contains information on 12 common birth defects. And here we have a bigger difference. The blue bar is much larger than the brown bar. The decline was much greater near the Indian Point reactor, about 7% locally versus about 1% in the rest of the state. The third set of bars looks at the change in rates of very low weight births. And here the gap is quite big. It went down 12.5% near Indian Point and only 3.3% in the rest of the state. The fourth and final set of bars to the right looks at premature babies. There's a large gap here as well, down 13% near Indian Point, down 2.5% for the rest of the state. It's important to know that if a baby is born at this very low weight or at this level of prematurity, the chances of the baby dying before age 1 year is about 80 to 100 times, not 80 to 100%, 80 to 100 times greater than a baby born normal weight after at least 39 weeks